Oh, yes.
Welcome back, everyone. Today we're taking a look at the new Transformers War for Cybertron Kingdom number 12, Core Class Starscream. Starscream is one of two new Core Class toys in this second wave, along with his begrudging boss, Megatron. And he's a tiny figure based off of his Transformers Earthrise design, and he's meant to scale with figures like the Core Optimus Prime. And is presumably going to be, part of the whole ARC playset gimmick thing that they got going on. So if you've seen my reviews before, you know how this goes. We're going to take a look at Starscream's packaging, then we'll open it up, we'll see the instructions, and then we'll see Starscream himself in both the vehicle and robot modes. I'll be doing some group shots and comparisons today, and then at the end of the video, I'll give my final thoughts. So Starscream comes in your typical blister card that is used for the smaller size classes. They haven't quite made the jump to boxes yet. And he gets some new artwork here, which is interesting. It's not recycled from Earthrise, because Earthrise actually used the Siege Starscream design. So, yeah, that is all new. And it does appear to actually be based off of this figure and not the Earthrise Voyager. You can see especially the little wing hinges right there are the same. So yeah, gets his own artwork. That's pretty cool. You can see the crashed Nemesis in the background, like you can for most Decepticons. And then you just get the Starscream toy himself, right front and center. Looks pretty good overall. You can see his null rays off to the sides. And then we flip it around, we get some renders for the toy. Vehicle robot mode. He takes 17 steps to transform. Like, that's more than some deluxes. In fact, I think it's the same number of steps that Inferno had. So that's interesting. Nice and complex for a little core class. I dig that. I gotta say, I kind of prefer the darker blues on the renders to what's on the finished toy. Would have really liked something more like this, but it's okay. They still look pretty decent. So yeah, let's go ahead and open this guy up and see what he's made of. Here we got our tiny little instruction book for Mr. Starscream. So you got his name, render, logos, all that. His line number, number 12. I'll go ahead and open this up. You get a how-to for attaching his arms to the null rays, or I guess detaching them, and then performing the sacrilegious act of having him wield them like rifles. Who does that, seriously? And then we just go straight into the transformation from robot to vehicle. Continues around on back. Shows you where to put everything. I guess they just assume you leave the null rays on his arms, huh? Yeah, looks like it. So, yeah, and then your finished product. Now we get to see Starscream's little vehicle mode. You can see it's little teeny tiny version of an F-15 or, something close to it. And overall, it doesn't look too bad. I'd say the nose cone's a bit short. Kind of reminds me of the Classics mold, where the kind of nubby little nose cones. But everything lines up pretty well with the detailing. He gets the Decepticon symbols on the wings, though they're facing the wrong way. He's got the red striping, the red on the intakes. He's got a goldish colored cockpit, sadly not translucent. Then he gets the blue on the stabilizers in the back. I think his blue is a little darker than the Earthrise. Sadly, no stripes on here. And then, of course, he's got his null rays, and they're just kind of sticking out forward. So overall, not too bad looking. You can see he obviously uses a fake chest here, and you can see a good chunk of the robot mode. There's the back of his head. So not the most subtle. He also gets a little 3mm port right here. Wonder what you do with that. Maybe there's gonna be like a little mini Megatron gun. Actually, I figured it out. I know why that's there. I'm willing to bet that if you take the small gun from the concurrently released Megatron, you can plug it in here, just like you can for the Masterpiece toy. Look at that. I guarantee they plan that. Yeah, the Masterpiece can do that too. It can attach Megatron's pistol mode to the underside of the cockpit there, or the nose cone, I mean. So that's pretty neat. I didn't realize that till just now that he could do that. That's a really great bit of crossplay there. It also mimics what you can do with the Earthrise version of the toy, who I happen to have right here. And this guy can hold the Megatron pistol that comes with the accessory pack, the Centurion drone one. Albeit not very well, kind of just barely plugs in there, but I can't believe that that's a coincidence. I mean, they both wield it in just the same way, right under the nose cone, upside down. That's got to be intentional, right? I don't know, maybe. But even without these, go ahead and remove them. That's a little tight. There you go. All right, you can see just how well this little guy emulates his larger counterpart. They look very similar. And I already pointed out some differences, like the moved Decepticon symbols and all that, and the lack of striping. You can see it is a much deeper blue than the Earthrise toy. But overall, at least from the top, they do look very similar. This does look like a downscaled version of this toy. Even this little pin right here, either intentionally or unintentionally, mimics the little 5mm port on the top of this toy. So I think that's really cool. I think, for something that's a third of the price of a Voyager, it does a pretty good job of looking like a miniature version of that Voyager. Okay, now it's time to do our transformation. So the first thing I'd recommend doing, you don't have to do this, but it's a bit easier, is go ahead and remove the null rays, because they have a tendency to pop off while you're transforming them. It's kind of annoying. So yeah, go ahead and do that. Fold up the tail fins there. You're going to rotate these in. You got to kind of pull them away from the leg to rotate them. They lock in place in both positions here, like so. And you're going to untab his forearms from the undersides of the wings. Then rotate at the elbows to put them in a more natural position here, like this. Then you're going to pull his chest halves apart. See right here. It's kind of interesting how they do this, where like one side is just, this red half, and the other side is that plus the cockpit. They're just tabbed into the knees. And fold all that stuff just completely back. And you'll pull this down, separate the feet. And then you're going to separate this part. Just going to pull it away from the body. Just get all that stuff out of the way. And you rotate this whole wing and arm assembly around. Bring this up. Fold the nose cone all the way back, like so. Turn his head around. And you're going to position it like so, to where the top of this panel is just slightly lower than these little parts of the intakes there. And then you're going to close up his chest. So you just bring this in, get it to click into place like so. Get the wings at a slightly pointed back angle like this. All right. And then go ahead and reattach the null rays if you took those off. It's much easier to do it that way. Though, if you don't like parts forming and you want to risk it, feel free. All right. Here it is. Look at this little guy. This is a really neat looking little Starscream, and he does very, very much resemble his Earthrise counterpart. Aside from just aesthetics, though, he's also quite posable. He has a head that turns on a swivel. It's kind of hard to get to with the big old shoulder intakes, but you can. He's got ball-jointed shoulders, null rays that want to pop off, ball-jointed elbows, so you get a lot of posability there. Acts as like an elbow bend and a bicep swivel. He doesn't have a functioning waist swivel, so he's really a lot like his Earthrise counterpart. Ball-jointed hips, single bend knees, and unfortunately no ankle tilt, but that's actually pretty rare for this size class. The only ones I can think of that have ankle tilt are Vertebrake and Rat Trap. Alright, so he looks really cool. If you want to, you can have him wield Megatron's pistol mode in this mode. Put it in either hand. Now it's a really tight fit into his fists. So just be careful. I don't want you breaking anything off. In fact, I wouldn't push it in much further than that. It's extremely tight. So just be aware of that. It's kind of like Optimus Prime's gun. It really just doesn't slot all the way in. But it still looks pretty cool. Still looks like he can do a lot of damage with this little tiny gun here. Here's the bigger version again, just so you can see how they compare in robot mode. Again, this is a really, really good interpretation of that same design in a smaller size class. In fact, the only major detail that I can notice right off the bat is lack of a red pelvic area and lack of little stripes on the shins. They're actually molded, they're just not painted. Other than that, they're very similar. They both have a nose cone that just kind of hangs off the back. And, you know, I like it. I like how well they could kind of maintain the quality of the toy while downsizing it to, you know, half the height. And as I mentioned, you can see that the Earthrise Starscream can wield the Megatron pistol for his size class. So they really look like little twinsies now. Lastly, here's a group shot with the other so far released Generation 1 core class guys. Sans, of course, Megatron, because I'm going to do his review next. And this just, you know, goes to give you a pretty good idea of how he scales with the other core class guys that are supposed to be, you know, miniature Gen 1 guys. Not going to include the Beast Wars characters because they kind of have their own scale. And you can see he's just a tiny bit shorter than Optimus. So, yeah, about the right size, I would say. And then Bumblebee, well, Bumblebee's a little too big for this scale, honestly. He should be, like, almost an inch shorter than he actually is. So, that's not really Starscream's fault that Bumblebee's too big for him. That's just entirely the fault of this Bumblebee toy. It just really doesn't fit in with the other core classes. Okay, so now that we've looked at everything, I'm going to give you guys just kind of a final thought on Starscream. I think this is one of the best core class toys that we've received so far. They managed to keep his looks in both vehicle and robot mode extremely faithful to his Voyager counterpart. I'd say Optimus is kind of a close second. He gets most of it right. Bumblebee and Megatron, they just kind of do their own thing. And you'll see more Megatron here in the next review. So I'd say, as far as just being a downsized version of a bigger character, he succeeds better than any of the others so far. I know we got a Soundwave coming here in the next wave, who looks pretty good overall, though I think maybe his boombox mode is a little wonky. But once we get him in hand, we'll see how Starscream compares to him. So, I like this guy. And if you like the core class thing, I think he's very much worth your $10. I mean, you know, $10 doesn't buy what it used to, right? It used to be a whole deluxe, but that's another story. But if you are going to spend $10 on a core class figure, he's one of the best picks. He just does a really, really good job of capturing the character in both modes, and the proportions are really good. The only thing I don't like proportion-wise is the rather small nose cone, which honestly could have been bigger. There's not really a reason they couldn't have made it longer. It wouldn't interfere with anything, but that's what they went with. Either way, I think he's really cool looking. I love that you can have him wield Megatron's gun in both his jet and robot modes. And he just looks really good. The paint's really nice, the face sculpt, all that. He's a really, really good core class toy. So, you know, if you see him in store, which you should by now, you know, he's starting to pop up in Walmarts, feel free to pick him up. I think you'll like him. It's a lot of fun to play with. Of course, that's just my thoughts on the new Starscream. Now I want to know what you all think of this toy. Do you see him as worth getting? Did you go in on the Earthrise Starscream? I know he was kind of divisive with people. And if you did, could you see yourself getting this guy as well? Or if you didn't, can you see this guy replacing him in your collection? Any and all feedback is always welcome in the comments section. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to toss it a like. Let YouTube know you want to see more stuff like this. If you do want to see more like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you always get a heads up when I post something new. And thank you for joining me for this look at the brand new Transformers War for Cybertron Kingdom Core Class Starscream. And with all that said, I will see you next time.